Welcome to the Gold Coast Arts and International Film Festival virtual screening room. My name is Regina Gill, and I am the founder and executive director of Gold Coast Arts. And I want to thank you all for joining us today for my conversation with director Matt Ratner and writer Peter Hoare from Standing Up, Falling Down, a film which premiered to a sold-out audience at our 2019 Gold Coast International Film Festival. Peter, we're going to start with, first I'm going to say a little something. Peter Hoare is a Brooklyn-based screenwriter and TV writer. His work for Standing Up, Falling Down premiered to rave reviews, and he recently wrote an action comedy for Netflix. He has two exciting new projects coming up called Family Jewels and Down Undercover that we can't wait to hear about, although I'm pretty sure that given what's going on right now, there's going to be some news about delays and so on, but we'll find out. Matt Ratner is the founder of Tilted Windmill Productions and has produced 8 films under the Tilted Windmill banner that have all opened to critical acclaim at top-tier festivals, going on to win multiple awards. Standing Up, Falling Down is his directorial debut, where he has already received awards for Best First Picture and Best First Feature and Best Screenplay Award, just to name a few. He most recently produced the film We Broke Up, which is currently in post-production. We look forward to hearing about that very shortly. And we are so thrilled to welcome back, because we all spoke at the film festival at the conclusion of that film, Standing Up, Falling Down. So let me formally welcome you both back, Matt and Peter, from your homes in LA and
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. We got LA and Brooklyn here with us today, and through the magic of Zoom, and I'm here in Great Neck, and we're going to be talking about their film, Standing Up, Falling Down. Welcome, Matt and Peter.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Oh, well, I just remember what a great conversation we had. Your energy was so fantastic. The audience was so pumped after seeing the film, and having you there with us was just, it was just the icing on the cake. It was fantastic. So I hope that was a good memory for you too. And we're happy to do a review on the film. Yeah. So let's start with, before we go to the film, I'm just curious, what have you been doing with the film? How have you been traveling with the film since we met? I think that was in November.
It was in November, because it was actually the same weekend, I believe, as my sister's wedding. So I have it. I'll always remember the Gold Coast Film Festival. No, you know, we did a bunch more festivals, and this is always my favorite question, because it gets to help people can see the film. We came out in February in a variety of cities theatrically, and then on sort of all of your download sites of choice. You can find us on Amazon, on iTunes, on PlayStation, Xbox, wherever you buy or rent movies, you can buy or rent us.
Well done, and congratulations. That's terrific.
And I should say, there's also, we also have our physical release, so you can also buy a DVD, Blu-ray, and there's some fun bonus features on there. We've got some fun, behind the scenes vignettes and a whole audio commentary of Ben, Billy, myself talking through the film. So if you didn't get enough of Billy and Ben's repartee when you watch the movie, you can watch it and hear a whole different repartee.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of the bonus features for the DVD. I think they came out really, really well. So if you're a big fan of the film, I actually am. I can firmly say that you'll enjoy the bonus features and the features, all the behind the scenes stuff that are on there. It's really good.
So the bonus features can be found
on the DVD.
You also have access to them if you buy the film online. So if you buy it on iTunes instead of renting it, you can access all the bonus features that way as well.
We just want our viewers to know specifically where they can find everybody.
Absolutely.
The insights, the ad libs, the kind of thing that you don't see as part of a film. So having said that part of it, let's talk about, you scored Billy Crystal for this film, right? And that must have been a coup in terms of getting the film out there.
Oh yeah, certainly.
So how did you get Billy Crystal? Because I can tell you, we tried to get Billy Crystal, and he's a Long Island guy, and we love him. We think he's incredibly talented and a wonderful guest if we could ever get him. But we have not been successful so far. So kudos to you.
You know, I mean, it all starts with script. Honestly, it always has. It always will. And Peter just did a phenomenal job from the first time I ever read the thing, and you know, we were really fortunate. You know, an independent film, and this is not a big budget movie. The last thing you want to do is waste a lot of time, you know, waiting on actors of Billy's stature to not read your screenplay. So it was really important to us that when we got some feedback that it might be the kind of thing he was looking to do. It was really important to us that that we didn't spend a month waiting for him to not look at it. And I never give credit to agents. I give a lot of credit to his team because they really, you know, they got it in front of him. He read it. I was back in New York. I was scouting because we just decided, you know, we're barreling ahead. We're making this thing. We're making this thing if I have to put my uncle as Marty. And got the call that he'd read it and wanted to meet. Flew back sort of hurriedly to LA and watched When Harry Met Sally on the plane to try and rewatched, I should say. And met with Billy for about an hour and a half. You know, he was enthused, he was engaged, he had a lot of questions, there were a lot of things he was wondering about, and then got him and Ben and Peter and I all on the phone, and Peter can talk about this, but I think that we were so fortunate to have, Billy and Ben are credited as executive producers on the film, and those aren't vanity credits. I mean, they worked their tails off way before action and long after cut, and they were so heavily involved in the creative side of the film. I think Peter and I both feel incredibly fortunate that way.
Oh yeah, there was like a 2-week period where he was considering it. It wasn't that long of a process. He read it fast and he really dove in and he hopped on the phone with us to really chop up what the character was and get inside the head of Marty. But there was a 2-week period where we were texting and calling constantly, being like, "He's gonna do it. Is he gonna do it? I think he's gonna do it. Are we gonna get Billy Crystal in this movie?" And we were just thrilled about it.
I can imagine.
I remember the exact moment. I remember where I was. I was at
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, I was at an ice cream shop in Brooklyn on Wythe and North 4th here in Brooklyn, and Matt called me and said, he's in. I remember just being ecstatic about it. Yeah, I mean, he's perfect for this. He's perfect for this movie.
I remember very vividly as well because we were, we would get notes from him, and then Peter and I would try and implement them, and as we're going through this period where we knew he was interested, and we were on a very tight schedule because Ben and Billy's availabilities had a very limited window where they overlapped where we could do it. So we were really turning things around fast. And I remember very vividly because I was in.
When you say turn things around fast, for the benefit of people not in the movie business, what does that mean? What exactly was your window?
I mean, what Peter said about, I mean, we had to shoot the film. We shot the film in November, early December. And we had Billy for 10 days. The 10 days that we shot with Billy were the only 10 days for like 6 to 8 months where we would have been able to have Billy and Ben working on a film together. And obviously for the film to start shooting in November, that means you have to start, locations and other casting and all that stuff, which means spending money. So we had to, and in order to do that, you have to know that they're doing it. So even though this was back in September that Billy agreed to do it, we really had to know. And the reason I remember it was in September is because I was in Colorado for the high holidays, and I remember it was right around Rosh Hashanah, and I remember this. Don't tell my rabbi. I remember this because I got an email from Billy with a bunch of notes, and I saw the email when I was in Temple, and I walked out of Temple to read the notes to see if we were on the right page, same page. I think I texted Peter, and then I went back into Schwartz.
We won't even go there.
At least it wasn't Yom Kippur.
Yeah. Oh, at very least. So for the benefit of people who don't know how this works, you don't shoot in sequence, correct? So you would have shot scenes out of sequence because of availability of the actors, correct?
Not just because of that, because of the nature of locations. Is this going to play before or after the film?
This is going to play.
This Q&A.
This Q&A can play anytime.
Okay, so I won't get into spoilers then, but there's certain scenes where if you've got 3 scenes that all occur in the same location, but they're on page 10, 30, and 80 of the script, you'll shoot them close together. So the last stuff that we shot, the last scene we shot was actually the final scene in the movie, but that's pretty unusual.
So you have to be a pretty good actor to stay in character and know where you were and to pick it up emotionally and truthfully at whatever point your director tells you this is your time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of, again, a lot of that comes from the emotional truth of the scene as written, and some of that is where my job comes in of making sure that, I mean, this is, theater acting 101 is, what are the given circumstances of the scene? And it's when you're running around, you've got a crazy 12-hour day, remembering, okay, this moment you just saw, whatever, the aliens abduct your son, and that needs to be a part of the scene, and, whatever that is, because it is often jumbled.
And as a screenwriter, what were you up to while this was going on?
Oh, I was there every day, actually. I was on
No,
set.
I'm sure. But I'm just wondering did you ever get tempted to rewrite or?
We were rewriting. I mean, there was this was a pretty, this was an indie film. There was a day where, and I'll always remember this because it was just, I'll die loving this memory, where we were rewriting a scene while going from Long Beach, on Long Island, obviously, to East Rockaway to shoot a scene at the boardwalk, and we were rewriting a scene in the back of my Volkswagen with Bill Crystal. We had another producer driving. I think Matt was in shotgun, and it was me and Billy in the back seat. I had to move my laundry. So I have family and friends in Long Beach. So I had literally had my laundry in my back seat because I was doing my laundry that day in between scenes or whatever it was. And I was not prepared to have Billy Crystal in my back seat while in the back of my Volkswagen, rewriting a scene in real time. So
well, it also was, it was like a sketch, because I'd said to Peter, okay, we're going to work on this scene with Billy on the way. I think Peter thought he was getting in like one of the set cars.
I did.
The way that the vehicles worked out, because Ben had wrapped and Billy hadn't or whatever. Billy was going in Peter's car, which Peter didn't realize, I think, until like 40 seconds before Billy got in the car. So we're like literally, and this was day 2 or 3 of shooting. This was day 2 of shooting. And so we were like, things are going well, but we don't want to get off on the wrong foot. So we like rush out and are literally pulling his dirty socks out and throwing them in the trunk.
Guy's an icon. He's hosted the Academy Awards countless times, and here I am moving my jeans, my dirty jeans. I'd seen an indie movie with us. But yeah, and by the way, he didn't, he jokes about it, but he never complained or anything. Billy was the coolest.
I think that's phenomenal. I think that tells people that this is work like any other work, and it's not all limos and champagne. It's
well, quite
it's
honestly, quite the opposite. And one of the things that I love about these kinds of movies and their challenge, the lack of resources, is unquestionably a challenge. It's a challenge at every level of production, but it means that everybody who's working on this film is doing it because they love the material and they love the film. And that's true from Billy to, the young PA where it's their first set job. And that sort of clarity of purpose is nice.
I think that's what it's all about. That's great. When you had, now I'm assuming you cast Ben first, is that right?
No, we cast Billy first.
Cast Billy first. So it was the chemistry between Billy and whoever you were going to be casting. And how did those tryouts work so that you finally knew you had the right co-star?
It's not if this were a studio film, we would have done endless chemistry reads, and you don't have that luxury in this kind of thing. We had, I think, 5 or so actors that we were enthused about and thought would do a good job and were available and maybe would do it. And when you bring somebody like Billy on, you want him to be a part of the process creatively. So I said, here are the 5 actors we're looking at. Here are their materials, here are their reels. And Billy watched all of them and really sparked to Ben's material. And then, the sort of vagaries of filmmaking, we had to basically cast Ben over the phone. He was shooting something in Atlanta. He and Billy met very briefly in LA, but Peter and I were in New York. So we spent a lot of time on the phone, but neither Peter nor myself actually met Ben physically till like a day and a half before we started shooting.
Yeah, but then, and there was also a lot of little weird kismet things about this project. But after I had first written the script and I had sat down for a creative meeting, even before Matt was on board, I had sat down with Chris Mangano, one of the producers of the film, and we were just talking about the possibilities for the Scott character. And I had walked to meet Chris at this restaurant called The Bedford here in Brooklyn, and I was listening to Ben on a podcast. And I said, "What about Ben Schwartz?" And he was one of the first names, just like thrown about casually in conversation. And that was even before
before I knew the script existed.
Totally, so before I read the script. And by the way, and that comment was not the genesis of us getting Ben by any means. It just happened to be another weird little kismet coincidence for this.
Was it Comedy Bang Bang?
Yep, Comedy Bang Bang. Yeah.
So sort of he was organically part of this film almost before you did it.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I've been a fan of Ben Schwartz forever. I mean, he's an amazingly brilliant
Well,
improviser.
that's actually part of my next question. We're talking about writing this script. Yes, we've gone on, now we're backing it up. So how did you cut? And I think you talked about, in fact, I know you talked about this at our first meeting at the premiere of this film for the Gold Coast. How did the idea start? Who inspired it? What inspired it? And where did it go from there?
As succinctly as possible.
And how long did it take?
Oh, yeah.
Clearly up until the Volkswagen, but let's.
No, yeah, it was an ever-evolving script while we were shooting, of course. I was living for the entirety of 2015 into a little bit of 2016. I was living in Los Angeles. I went out there just for the sake of the business and trying to make it as a screenwriter. And I had kind of irons in the fire all over the place. Nothing was really working. When I say that, I mean nothing was earning me any money. And I was wildly stressed and my anxiety was through the roof, and I had hives on my arm that wound up being stress hives. And I went to a dermatologist and he said, it would actually look like stress hives. I think that because my daughter recently went through a divorce and she had very similar hives on her arm. I had them right here on my forearm. And we kind of had a conversation that was I felt like it was like a patient therapist conversation, not a patient dermatologist conversation. And I just liked the idea of, oddly, me having that conversation with my dermatologist. I had moved home to Long Island like 3 or 4 weeks after that, but I found something about our interaction there charming enough that I thought it could be the building block of a movie. And also when I came home, I kind of came home like, for all intents and purposes, I failed in LA. It did not work. So I kind of came home with, everybody says, I wish I had the book on me right now. I would open it. There's a screenwriting book, and the first page of the first chapter, it's chapter 1. It's 1 page. All it says is "Moved to LA." That's the chapter of the screenwriting book. And I moved home, and I was like, screw that. No, like I'm gonna succeed. I'm gonna do it from Long Island, and I'm gonna do it, or New York, wherever I may be. So I came home really kind of inspired to write what I thought was, the best the best script I've ever written. So I came home very inspired. And with the little nugget of my interaction with that dermatologist in my head, I just started writing. And I wrote it I wrote a first draft in about 5 weeks, but then it was rewritten. I can't even, it was rewritten countless times. And then, when Matt came on board, we tweaked it and rewrote it again, and then we obviously fine-tuned it for Ben and Billy, so it was an evolving script. But the first draft was about 5 weeks.
Now, when you write a script, do you have people look at it before you go on to do the rewrites? I mean, or is this strictly inside your head and when you've got to rewrite? What's your creative process?
I have a manager I've been with for about 7 or 8 years now. Her name is Kelly Marsh. She's at Brillstein. She's a really, really, really smart creative producer, and she's just a good creative sounding board for me. So okay. She is who I generally get my feedback from. And then the script went out, take it out, as they say, to all of the producers and studios. And my feedback was generally that it was a good script, but it was small. And they say that as if it was a knock. Like, this was meant to be a small movie. It's a small story. I love small stories. I love little character-driven, dialogue-driven films. So like, this was never going to be, Endgame. There was never going to be anything flashy about this movie, but I never wanted it to be flashy.
I haven't shown you the Thanos cut.
No, I need to see that. I want to see where Billy shoots fire out of his fingers. No, but it was always meant to be a small movie. So I had an agent at the time who was like, he literally, his reaction was, "This is a really, really good movie, but have you ever thought of written anything like Ace Ventura?" That's his legitimate reaction.
Who said this?
How did you get from A to B? My agent at the time, I say, because he's now
right at the time being the key clause there.
I'm like, that is the worst reaction. We're getting this movie made, and
that's when he gets the.
Yeah,
well, I also think
she was very supportive of it, and she gave me a lot of creative feedback.
Something that happened, when we were doing this sort of press tour with Ben and Billy, that Billy brought up, which I think is an incredibly perceptive and true comment, is people talk about indie films, they talk about small movies, and yes, this is a small movie in terms of the we're not blowing things up, but it's a big damn movie, and it's a big damn movie because of how important it is to all of us, and because of the fact that the human consequences and the choices you make and all the thematic and performance elements of the film. It doesn't have to have an action sequence on a skyscraper to have big emotional stakes. And I think one of the reasons that the script resonated with so many people is because it's a quote small movie that feels much bigger than it is because of those emotional stakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's emotional grandiosity to it, where if someone were to just read the script and see two guys at a bar, they can go, "This is a small." No, man, you're just not seeing it. And luckily, I found Matt, who did see it, and the other producers of the film, and I'm super, super, super proud of how it turned out.
So at what point did the two of you know that you were going to be working together?
Probably about a year or so before we started filming, year and a half.
Yeah. I remember I was working on a show called Kevin Can Wait that actually was shot in Long Island, shot in Bethpage, a CBS sitcom. And I was driving home for the day, and I had my first conversation with Matt as I was in traffic on the LIE, driving back to Brooklyn. And I could tell right away that Matt was somebody who should be directing this movie. I could tell right away.
It's
so
funny.
Even without Zoom, just talking.
Just talking.
Well, there are a lot of different versions of this film, and there's it's something that I think was rightfully very important to Peter. This is his, this is not the movie he wrote to buy the house. This is the movie he wrote to have artistic fulfillment, and it's so much about his own life and his own journey. And I should say, Peter is one of the most gracious writers I've ever worked with on sort of Kill Your Darlings, and does it make the movie better? And if it makes the movie better, we should do it. But it obviously, particularly as someone who at the time was a first-time director, I think you want to make sure that I was going to make your story and the story you wrote. And then similarly for me, once we very quickly connected, I think that we were interested in telling the same story. And then it becomes incredibly important that that's true with every member of the cast. That's true with every production head, that, the cinematographer is, lensing the same story that Billy or Ben or Eloise or whoever are acting in. And so I think that that was one of the places where we got really fortunate, was not only internally with each other, but with Billy and Ben. They saw the story with all of its ups and downs, and all of its sort of pathos in very much the same way we did. There was never a feeling of wanting to make it broader. There was never a feeling of wanting to make it darker. We just were all really pretty lockstep tonally from day one.
Yeah, it's weird in that there was not one. I'm just realizing this now as I'm saying it out loud for the first time. There was not one creative battle at all between anyone on the.
No, well, and it's because every note came from the place of trying to make it better. And I think that not even different, but and so then it's really easy to say, okay, I see why you want to do this. That doesn't really work, I don't think, for these reasons, but what about this? And so then that's when the creative process is engaging and exciting.
Absolutely, when it's truly back and forth.
Yeah.
Now, this was your first directorial experience, and what did you think it was going to be like, and what did it actually turn out to be like? And what did this actual experience directing Peter's film, his screenplay, how did that prepare you for your next, which I want you guys to talk about, your next projects?
I mean, I think directing is an unusual endeavor because it's particularly directing film. You can do shorts, you can direct theater, you can do other things to sort of practice and hone that instrument, but it's very hard to direct a movie without directing a movie. It's very, it is its own different, unique animal. And I was very fortunate because I had a really extensive producing background. I'd produced a bunch of films. And many of them with either first-time feature directors or people sort of earlier in their careers. And so I had a lot of experience kind of working with first-time directors, and the producer side of me knew how to protect them. I wasn't used to them being me. And part of that starts with obviously having a strong team, having a strong producerial team. And as a director, I think the the challenges that are unique are everybody wants something from you all the time, right? And they're all very valid. Whether your prop guy has a very legitimate question about an essential prop, your script supervisor wants to know if it's okay that there was this continuity error, your actors need things, or your cinematographer wants to talk to you about the setup, the camera, and they're all extremely valid. So filtering out kind of all these things that happen at any moment, what's salient, what's going to have the biggest impact on the movie, making sure everyone's making the same movie. And then I think the hardest thing to remember is, as a director, there is one thing and one thing only that you are the only person on set who can do. And if anybody else does it, it's really a sort of faux pas of the highest order. And let's talk to the damn actors. And so remembering, and it's, I had a terrific cinematographer who really, helped enable this, remembering that that is your primary, yes, there's all the other stuff, but you got to communicate to the actors. You got to get them doing their best work. And making sure that was always the driver was something that I sort of knew, but you can't really know until you do it.
Having said that, how much communicating with Billy Crystal did you require in order to get his best work? How many takes on any particular scene?
It all depends. And I mean, I think, again, one of the things that Billy's really, Billy's a very accomplished director in his own right. So, you'd be setting up a camera and he'd know what lens was on the camera just based on where they were standing. And, Billy is an incredibly gifted actor in ways that I didn't really appreciate or know before working with him. The amount he cared about, okay, when did my character go to medical school? Because he couldn't have been doing these things while he was there. And he really doing justice and truth to that role was incredibly important to him. And we were very fortunate. We got along very well, and we had a very open line of communication. So if he felt something was his best work and he poured himself into it, he would tell me. And if there's something that I needed slightly differently for either technical reasons or there was a performance thing, he would always do it for me. There was never a moment of like, I'm beat, I'm done. I mean, Billy stayed on set between setups, and for people who don't kind of know the minutia of the film world, it takes a while to change the lights, to change the camera, to do all the touch-ups, yada yada. But he would stand around and help and be engaged. And when you're Billy Crystal and you've hosted the Oscars 9 times, and you set the tone for the crew. And I can try, and yes, my job is in theory to lead the crew, but they feed off that. And Ben as well, who is such a gracious person and such a gracious collaborator. But if at lunch, if Ben Schwartz goes and clears somebody on the crew's plate, that makes that crew member's year. And there are lots of wonderful movies that come off of hellacious sets. And there are lots of really lovely, harmonious sets that produce really bad movies. But when you can have both, it's just a lot better. And we were really lucky, I think, we had both.
Wonderful. And that's a very nice thing to bring out. So last comment about Billy Crystal, if you hadn't been able to get him, if he had said no, and I mean, I don't know how significant that would have been to you having written it and to you about to direct it. Did you have a plan B?
I mean, sure. Because frankly, I don't think in your wildest dreams you believe that Billy's going to do it. I mean, it's hard. He so inhabits this role. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think it's really one of the best dramatic performances of his career, and a career full of them. He so inhabits this role that it's now impossible to envision it being anyone else.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I couldn't picture anyone else in the role. And like it's so weird to say, but like he couldn't have been choice A because we never thought we could get him.
Right.
So
right.
if we thought we thought that was even a remote possibility, of course he would be choice A. But I never thought. We kept saying, like, are we making a Billy Crystal movie? Because we didn't do it. And then it's perfect.
You did the thing that everybody always says: reach for the stars.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, we
you really did. But you also had, and I don't want to stop our conversation or end our conversation without talking about We're going to talk about Ben Schwartz, and we're going to talk about Grace Gummer. I'm a big fan of the Gummer girls. Grace and her
They come by
sister.
it honestly.
Yeah, yeah. But I just wanted to know how did you, were there auditions involved? Were there just reels? So how did that work?
Yeah, so for every part except, I guess, including Scott, you know, once Billy comes on, obviously the whole film changes in terms of just, you know, actors, people I've wanted to work with forever who, you know, come in and they work for 2-3 days. They maybe don't even have a scene with Billy, but there's a legitimacy that Billy being in the film provides. But when we originally started talking about the film, we talked about various budgetary levels of the film, you know, from, you know, making it for a stick of chewing gum to making it for 2 sticks of chewing gum. And so we auditioned a lot of, you know, we did a round of auditions in July. One of the benefits of shooting in New York, frankly, is you have access to just this incredible repository of brilliantly talented actors. We had a terrific casting team that really, again, that's a really hard job because you can't be a rubber stamp. You have to challenge and push, but you also have to try and make sure that the director is making the movie they want to make. And our casting team was just phenomenal. And then, you know, a lot of it, again, and I'm not just saying this because he's on the call, to the, you know, there's an extent, obviously, where so much of this movie is about the relationship between Ben and Billy's characters. But part of what I loved about the script was I've always loved ensemble pieces. And, you know, roles 3 through 9 are all sort of interesting, dynamic, fleshed out characters who there could be a movie about. And so when you've got that on the page, even if it's a quote small part, actors respond to that, and then they can come on and make it their own. And for somebody like Grace, you know, I think it was a chance for her to, you know, she often is probably more known for her dramatic work. It was a chance for her to do a little more comedy, which she's naturally incredibly gifted at. And then for us, you know, that's, you know, for folks who haven't seen it, Grace plays Ben's sister, and I have a sister, and we really wanted to avoid that relationship getting sticky, getting too kind of like, you know, hey, zing, zaya. And we felt like Grace would ground it.
Is that what a brother-sister relationship is? Hey, zing, zap?
Well, no, and that's what we didn't want on screen. Because it is, you know, a lot of their scenes are really quick, but we needed them to still feel lived in. And I think Grace, you know, Grace brought that in spades.
Yeah, she was great.
I agree. I thought that, but as I said, for those people who are going to be watching this who are not, I don't know where they've been living, but if they don't know that Grace Gummer, and she has 2 sisters, are the daughters of Don Gummer, who is a very well-known and rightly prominent artist that with whom we've been speaking about our gallery and an exhibit. But of course, their mother is Meryl Streep. Enough said. So these girls have grown up in a household where I can only imagine the kind of creativity that maybe it would be hard to be a brain surgeon coming out of that environment. I'm not sure.
See, I think the opposite. I think, I mean, I give them so much credit because to say, well, you know, I'm going to go into the same field as my mom, who is, you know, one of, if not the top actors in the history of cinema, and to create careers for themselves that are their own. And, you know, obviously what was sort of, once you see the resemblance, you can't not see it. But, you know, Grace's, the fact that, you know, Grace has the lineage she has played absolutely zero role in my casting of her, because,
sure.
you know, I don't care who your mom is. If you can't act, you can't act. And I give her
that actually, yeah.
And I give her tremendous credit for it, because, you know, I think, and I should also say that, you know, that she was such a delight to work with on set, and there was never she obviously, you know, grew up the daughter of Hollywood royalty, and you never sensed or felt that from her.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
There are dynasties of artists. You have the Andrew
Barry
Wyatt.
Moores.
Yeah, but you have, even in the art world, you've got N.C. Wyeth, who had Andrew Wyeth, who had Jamie Wyeth. And if you're involved in art, you would know that that's a dynasty right there. So yeah, there are, I have to pay tribute to people who have such a prominent parent in the industry,
Absolutely.
in the field, because you know that inevitably, I mean, Jane Fonda used to talk about, and after a while she got ticked off talking about it, but that she was Henry Fonda's daughter. And she said, yeah, she said, that got me the audition, but that did not get me the Oscar.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to give them credit. It's a challenge, and it's at the same time it's not a boo-hoo challenge, but
Right.
it's still a challenge all the same. It opens doors for you, sure, but you can't sit down.
But you
and
got to
take
walk
a
through
pill.
them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's good. So and Ben, you talked briefly about Ben. To say that Ben was wonderful in his part would not be an exaggeration.
Thank you.
He held
I mean,
his own and seemed to be enjoying himself with playing with everybody.
Well, you know, one of the things for Ben is, and we had this conversation, is I said, look, I know you're enthused to work with Billy. Obviously, you've come up, you know, in the comedy world. You know, Billy's an icon. You know, but you got a lot. You know, you're in scripts 110 pages. You're in 99 of them or whatever. And you know, he really is in some. You know, he's such a part of the emotional core of the film. And I think, you know, for Ben, he's obviously better known probably for his comedic work. You know, Peter and myself and the producers, we all felt like he had this sort of dramatic gear and this nuance to his performance that the part would allow him to explore. And I mean, it was really, some of his work was just sort of not only brilliantly quick and witty and funny, but sort of devastating and heartbreaking. And again, someone who's just like a sponge, and just wants to work and wants to dive in.
Yeah, I think Ben was great in the movie, and the reason that the movie became as kind of special as it is, and as good as it is, in my opinion, is as the characters of Scott and Marty were bonding and becoming friends in very much in real time. Ben and Billy were bonding and becoming really, really good friends.
They did not know each other before filming this film.
And they're very tight now. Like, they're very close. Like, they really fell into an instant chemistry with each other that we really lucked out that they loved each other in real life, and still do.
And they both owe you, don't you? Don't they?
Yeah, the matchmakers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. A new career. Tell us about your upcoming projects.
Okay. Yeah, I have two features that were set to shoot this year, but
this year, like 2020, the year that shall forever be an asterisk.
Yeah. Yes, the forgotten year.
Never forgotten.
Realistically speaking, I don't think either of them will happen this year, 2020.
Really?
I have a movie called Down Undercover, an action comedy starring Chris Hemsworth and Tiffany Haddish. It's kind of in the vein of 21 Jump Street or Lethal Weapon. And it was supposed to shoot in Australia this year. It likely will now be top of next year. And then there's one that the quarantine is good for writing, let's say, because I was supposed to, when this started, I had 3 pages of it. And now I'm almost done with a rewrite, a movie called Family Jewels, which reteams the stars of The First Wives Club, Bette Midler, Diane Keaton, and Goldie Hawn.
Really?
Yeah, a big kind of multi-generational holiday comedy in the vein of, say, A Christmas Vacation, or kind of where Christmas Vacation meets the movie The Family Stone, if you've ever seen it. Actually, another movie. But
I see them all.
We were going that one. They had hopes of shooting this year. Perhaps it still does, honestly. But the script is written and it's been announced, so we're hoping it happens this year.
That's super. That's great. And fingers crossed.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
And you?
Yeah, I got sort of lucky as well. I produced a film that we wrapped just before all this craziness hit.
Really?
And it was, you know, if our production schedule had been a month later, we just wouldn't have shot it. But worst case, if it had been 2 weeks later, we would have had half a movie. And so we're in the midst of post-production and editing on that. It's called We Broke Up, with Aya Cash and William Jackson Harper, and it's a terrific cast, and I'm really excited about it. And the early cuts are, you know, are looking really good, and frankly way better than early cuts normally do, because they're normally train wrecks. So busy sort of in post-production on that, and then got a couple sort of exciting directorial things which I can't talk about.
Oh, okay. Well, this is definitely not the place you want to share secrets. So that sounds good. And I'm learning the new landscape. Physically, our building is closed, and the theaters available to anybody are closed. So we have been pivoting to put films online, and we're trying to juice it by having wonderful interviews like this one, so that that's not an opportunity that a typical member of an audience, they don't typically get to meet the director and the screenwriter. So, and I know that we've had some great responses to this kind of dialogue. So I'm very grateful to the two of you for having made yourselves and the film available to us. And I just want last thoughts.
I couldn't be more proud of this movie. I really, really can, especially as somebody who's born and bred on Long Island, and
Right.
it's Long Beach where we shot is very close to my heart, and I literally couldn't be more proud of this film. It is the movie that was shot and the movie that was released is the movie that I wrote, which honestly, there's no guarantee that ever even happens again in my entire career. So
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, I mean, I think just it's so meaningful for us to be able to do this and to be able to sort of share share even remotely with an audience. This is why we make movies. And there are a lot of people, a lot of pushing rocks up hills, and then to be able to have a story that gets out and love it, hate it. I think one of the things Peter and I are both most proud of is that we did tell the story we wanted to tell. And I would just say that I know it's crazy times, and I think that in crazy times the arts are as important and vital as ever. And I really encourage everyone to, through Gold Coast, through whoever you care about and you support. The arts always need support. They need it even more now. And just so thank you all for doing this.
Well, Matt and Peter, I thank you again for being with us on behalf of everybody who's working so hard in the arts, and on my team, the Gold Coast Arts. We really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you.
Total pleasure. Thanks.